Adam and Eve, right? And then it is elaborated more in the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not covet others' things or others' wives. Then it is more elaborated in the New Testament by Jesus. He's saying, if you need to have only one wife. You need to be faithful to one wife. Because of your sin, Moses allowed divorce, but it is not from the beginning. Jesus uses the word, God did not allow it from the beginning. So divorce was not there from the beginning. So as and when you come from Genesis towards the New Testament, each principle has been elaborated. So it is important to follow the basic principle. Why is this so important? Let's turn to Isaiah 47-8. If someone can read Isaiah 40th chapter, 7th and 8th verses. I'll read it. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, because the Spirit of the Lord bloweth upon it. Surely the people is grass. Now if you see the previous text, it says, all flesh is grass, and all the goodness thereof is the flower of the field. So we are the grass, and the goodness that we have, they are the flowers. But if you see the next text, the Spirit of the Lord bloweth upon it. So the Spirit of the Lord blows upon it, meaning the Spirit of the Lord is giving life to it. The Spirit of the Lord is giving life to the grass, that is the flesh, is giving life to the goodness, that is our goodness. But the 8th verse, the grass withereth, the flesh die. The flower fadeth, our goodness will not be remembered. But the word of God shall stand forever. So that means to say that whatever God is speaking to the entire Bible, from Genesis down to Revelation, His word is not going to change. But your life, your goodness or badness will not be remembered. So the principle that God gives in scriptures are eternally permanent. The same thing you can see in Malachi 3:6, where it says, I am the Lord, I change not. Then in Hebrews 3:18, where Jesus Christ, where it says that Jesus Christ is the same today, yesterday, today, and forever. Now, if anybody would like to throw some light on this, the principles of first mention. Anybody would like to throw any light on this? Now, in the same lesson, there's a very important note. Much of the modern world speaks about truthfulness instead of truth, because the world assumes that the truth can change. Over time, the truth can change, and in some cases, the concept of truth can be questioned. So, for example, is there any example that you can give where people think that in those days it was possible, but now it is not possible, because those days they could do it, but now we can do better? Sabbath is one. Anything else? Marriage, staying together. God intended marriage between only two, husband and wife, but then our marriage between men, between ladies. Right? We can do better. So much of the modern world bases their concept on truthfulness, not on the truth. Because truthfulness means that we can change the truth according to our own will, not the truth. But when God establishes the truth, He does not change His mind. So when we look at Genesis, the principle established there, these are going to be core principles that take us through the entire Bible. Now, if you, for example, if you go to the college, you have certain subjects to study. So when we are studying one subject, there would be an introduction. So in that introduction, they would talk about the history, basic principles, which would go on to the rest of the chapters. The same way, Bible, Genesis, the first 11 chapters, which covers 2000 years of history, God is speaking prophecy, which would be enlightened in the rest of the chapters of the other books of the Bible. So Genesis is the foundation. that comes to our theme of our title of our study today, Genesis Foundation. So God uses the same principle. He introduces ideas, gives us a snapshot of that idea, and he reintroduces it somewhere else in the Bible by adding more detail to it. So whenever God is repeating a principle or a theme throughout the Bible, it does not change the meaning, but it increases the light on it. So it is very, very important to understand Old Testament or read Old Testament to understand the New Testament. And it is very important to understand the basics to know the revelation. Now the Old Testament, it shows the New Testament. It gives a snapshot of the New Testament. And the New Testament, it explains the Old Testament. That is, the New Testament, it enlightens the words of God in the Old Testament. So when God speaks about a prophecy, each subsequent prophecy builds on the coming prophecies. And this is always in agreement with both. Now you can see an example of Genesis. In Genesis, we see the fall of mankind. In Revelation, we see the redemption of mankind. Right? So if you understand why mankind has fallen, you will understand Revelation, how we are getting redeemed or how we are redeemed. So any thoughts on this till now? What is the central word to describe God in the great controversy between good and evil? What is the central word to describe God? Love. God is love. So if you do not know God, you do not know love. So the central word of the great controversy, which is between good and evil, is love. And what is the one word that you can give in the great controversy to Satan? If you can give the word love to God, what can you give to Satan? Sin. Now I'll rephrase that. If you can give God the word selfless love, you can give Satan selfish love. It is love of self. Okay? So, but there is a difference, selfish love and selfless love. God is selfless love. And where do we see this selfless love in Genesis? Where do we see the selfless love in Genesis? We see it in the story of Abraham and Isaac, the selfless love. We see the marvelous principle of God's love in Genesis 22nd chapter, 2nd verse. Can you open with me to Genesis 22nd chapter, 2nd verse? And he said, God says to Abraham, take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of. So this is the first mention of love in Genesis. But if you go in the previous chapters, love is mentioned as a principle. It's mentioned as marriage between Adam and Eve. But the word love per se has been mentioned only first time in Genesis 22nd chapter, 2nd verse. But the principle, we see it in marriage, or we see in creation when God created man. That was God's love. We see it in creation. The principle, we see it in the first chapters of Genesis, but the word love, we see it in 22nd chapter. So God asked Abraham to take his son to be sacrificed. Now this is a very hard situation for Abraham to digest. Now Abraham takes his son, climbs Mountain Moriah, and when he goes on to the mountain, Isaac asks, usually when they go for a sacrifice, they take everything. They take, except for stones, they take wood, they take fire, they take the lamb. But on the way to Moriah, only wood, and Abraham and Isaac were traveling along with his servants. So Isaac had a very important question. Where is the lamb? We are going to pray, we are going to sacrifice, but where is the lamb? And Abraham says, God himself will supply. Please understand the word himself. We'll come back to that. God himself will supply the lamb. So then they get on to the top of the mountain, and Abraham places Abraham places stones. He prepares an altar, places Isaac on the altar. he binds Isaac to the altar. Now, if you see, Abraham is more than 100 years old now, but Isaac is young. And so, in fear, he can fight with his father, Abraham, break him, and come out. But there was obedience on part of Isaac. Now, if you can see, the angel stops Abraham's hand. His knife falls. God provides him the ram, and they sacrifice the ram. Right. So, how can this be related in the New Testament? How is this? Now, if you see, Abraham can be seen as God the Father. Abraham can be seen as God the Father, and Abraham giving his son Isaac, that was an act of love to the father. Now, Abraham loved God, so he was willing to sacrifice his son. Now, the Father loves us, so he was willing to sacrifice his son. I'll repeat, sacrifice his son. I'll repeat, Abraham loved God, so he was willing to sacrifice his son Isaac. God the Father loves us, so he was willing to sacrifice his son for us. So God provided the lamb over there. In Abraham's story, God provided the lamb. In our story, God provided Jesus. So we see the symbol of lamb and Christ dying. In the symbol of the cross of Calvary, we see unselfish love of Jesus. On Calvary's cross, love was revealed and Satan's doom was certain. Down through the ages, the controversy is being played between God's love and God's selfless love and man's or Satan's selfish love, between sacrifice of Christ and between the pride of the evil one. Now, this we have talked about. We have seen the allegory between the lamb, Abraham's story, and Jesus' story.